Good evening. My name is Dave Mangus. I'm the director at Columbus Downtown High School. I want to welcome City Council President Ginther, Mayor Coleman, Chancellor Fingerhut, the City Council members that are with us, Columbus City School Board members that are with us to our evening tonight. This is Columbus City Schools Career Technical High School. I want to welcome everybody again. As we go through, I think there's a few things you want to know about Columbus Downtown High School. Columbus Downtown High School is a career tech high school that serves students in Columbus City Schools, Upper Arlington, Grandview, and Westerville City School Districts. Bringing those students together, there's about 550 students that come here. We offer the clusters of business, engineering, information technology, and personal services. Personal services are those programs that provide services to the public, such as our cosmetology, culinary arts, Air Force Junior ROTC, early childhood education. We have a Columbus Teaching Academy, and the list goes on. As they provide those services, it's very important to know that this building just houses half of our career technical programs. The other half are on our Fort Hays Career Center campus, which is on the Fort Hays Metropolitan Education Center. The clusters that they offer there are in the arts area, construction, automotive, and health services. It's really important to understand as we go through that it's important that we give students options in education, because the students that come to Columbus Downtown High School, 93% of them graduate on time. Of the students that come here, 59% pursue post-secondary education, and of those students that choose to go into the career fields, 70% of them choose to enter the career in the field of study they're studying. There are three ways that we try to increase and support career and college readiness at Columbus Downtown High School. First, we link all of our programs here to post-secondary options. So we do that through articulation agreements. We do it with PSEO, or our post-secondary educational opportunities. We do it through industry certification. We also have a situation where we can get students credit by doing some other credit transfers through our CT Squared and our tech prep organizations. That's a really important thing. So that's the college readiness. We also do career readiness. We have many internships that are paid and unpaid that we offer to students at Columbus Downtown High School. We also do job placement. Some examples of those internships that we do. Nationwide Insurance offers 10 of our students summer interns between their junior and senior year. They then continue to provide mentoring for those students during their senior year and encourage them to go to college so that they can come back and work in Columbus and for Nationwide upon graduating college. Our early childhood education program, which gets our students prepared through internships in their senior year to earn a CDA, which is the Child Development Accreditation Certification. They earn the hours, but we do encourage them to utilize the articulation agreements that we have with Columbus State Community College and Central Ohio Technical College to earn their two-year degree. The third way that we encourage students to be college and career ready is to make sure that we stay current in the occupational trends that go on in the Central Ohio region. So as the mayor points out in his proposal for economic development, logistics is an area where there's an occupational growth in Central Ohio. So Columbus Downtown High School, partnering with Columbus State Community College, will be offering a logistics program next year during the 2013 school year. So that's how we keep all of that up and going. There are many, many other things that are really interesting and important going on at Columbus Downtown High School. We have adult education programs. We have night school at this location. We also encourage customer service projects for our students. So we want to make sure that we keep these exciting things going. At this time, I would like to introduce Naomi Woodson Levy. She is a senior here at Downtown High School. Naomi was a student. She was in a small group of students that started a peer mentoring and mediation program in the building. That program was designed to help students be successful in school, but also to end bullying within the building. Naomi's also a member of our National Technical Honor Society, and she's doing an outstanding job. So, Naomi.
Good evening. It's an honor to be here to represent Columbus Downtown High School. I'm here to discuss a little about my school and introduce Mayor Coleman. What separates Columbus Downtown High School from other high schools is the teachings of employability skills. Here at Columbus Downtown High School, they prepared me for college in both professional and leadership in today's workplace. At Columbus Downtown High School, I've learned to understand the role I play in communities and responsibilities I have for the next generation. Columbus Downtown High School has showed me the importance of appropriate workplace habits. To ensure success in my future career, Columbus Downtown High School staff has set up mock interviews, internships. As Mr. Mangus said, I was one of the students who did the nationwide internships, and resume building. I'm currently interviewing for internship at Grange Assurance, and my experience here has equipped me for college and successfully career after graduation. I have the pleasure today of introducing Mayor Michael Coleman. Mayor Michael B. Coleman. Mayor Coleman has served as mayor of City of Columbus since 2000. During his tenure, Mayor Coleman has made our neighborhoods stronger and safer, revitalizing downtown Columbus, and has successfully led our city through a tough economic recession. Today, our school is proud to host his second briefing as Mayor Coleman embarks on a new initiative that is important to us all, education. Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor Michael Coleman.
Naomi, I am so impressed with you. You're going to go far in life, and I am proud of you, and you're just fabulous. And I want you to be successful, but I don't want you to run for the mayor next time, because you might win. So, and I'm also impressed with the school. I know it well. We've had many, many functions here over the years, few years it's been in this location. And just a few weeks ago, we had a neighborhood event here on the weekend, and it was just wonderful. And the great students here, I've been to a couple of graduations here, and I'm very impressed with the students and the principal and the teachers and everything about it, and the location as well. So congratulations on the success of this school. And I see a lot of good people in the audience. Priscilla Tyson, City Council, and welcome. And Gene Harris. I see Hanifa Kamban up there, right over there. And Gary Baker, School Board President Carol Perkins, Ramona Reyes, and Gary Baker. And if I missed anybody, I apologize. Just beat me up afterwards. Let's see, I don't think I see anybody else that's an elected official. I appreciate it. All of you being here. And last week was a very, very, very good week and very productive. I learned a lot. Last week in that assessment that we had. It went right to what we're trying to discuss. What was the baseline assessment of education in Columbus? And it went well beyond Columbus Public Schools, but into other environments as well. So today we're going to talk about workforce in the 21st century. Kenny McDonald, who's the CEO of Columbus 2020. Stacia Edwards, did I pronounce it right? Stacia Edwards, Director of Global STEM Workforce Development of Patel. David Harrison, Mr. President of Columbus State Community College, will all share information regarding all of these things. And this is so important. Part of my job and the job of this administration and City Council, and Andy can attest to this, and Priscilla, is to create jobs, help to create jobs in the City of Columbus. And we've been doing that the best we can. Just the other day, I think it was yesterday, the report came out and said it was 5.7% unemployment rate. We got up pretty high during the recession. And while 5.7% is not where we want to be, it's a vast improvement comparatively with comparing other cities around the state of Ohio, the lowest in the state. It's not low enough. The jobs are not paid enough, but people are going back to work, and there's much more yet to do. We have to continue to work hard on economic development, particularly in certain neighborhoods. in certain areas. We have in the city of Columbus a question we have to ask ourselves in this presentation and in future presentations as we move forward in this whole effort. Do we do a good job in matching up the jobs that are available, the workforce, with education and training? How do we do in that area? Are there gaps, and what do we need to do to close those gaps? You know, we have the largest university in the country here with the Ohio State University, the largest community college in the state, Columbus State. We have the largest private university in the state, and that's Franklin University, and the largest public school system in the state of Ohio, and the largest city in the state of Ohio. Yet I hear, especially now more than ever, that our young people, as the unemployment rate goes down, business leaders are saying we still don't have enough people to fill the jobs that we're starting to gear up for. And the question is, are these young folks ready after high school for the jobs that are available and to become available? And we need to understand what's going to become available and whether our education systems are meeting that need. So this will be a great discussion. I'm very much looking forward to it. Eric Fingerhut has been terrific in advising Andy and myself on this whole effort. And again, this is the second of 4 topics that we'll address during this phase of dealing with education in the city of Columbus. Eric? And President Ginther is going to turn it over to you.
Okay. I've got my own here.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Coleman and Council President Ginther. Thank you to the principal of this great high school and to Naomi for welcoming us here. Mayor and Council President, I'm pleased to participate with you in this second briefing, highlighting important issues and trends that affect the future of education in the city of Columbus. I thank you for your continued support and commitment to this learning process. A colleague of mine recently pointed out that we spend a lot of time and effort analyzing how our kids are doing in school, but virtually no time and effort making sure they are successful after they graduate. This important insight should remind us that the goal of our educational system is not simply to help our children pass a test, but to prepare our children for success in life. Primary and secondary education should be measured by the college and career readiness of our students. Tests and other assessments are important tools that help us gauge our progress towards student success, but ultimately these indicators of future success must yield to the actual evidence of success in college or in the workplace. If a student scores well on a report card or test result, but still cannot perform well in college or at work, then our measurements of progress are inadequate and our performance is unsatisfactory. Last week's briefing summarized what we know about the current performance of Columbus school children based on the metrics of success we currently utilize. The data we reviewed provided some insights into college readiness. For example, we learned that many students who graduate from high school are nonetheless in need of remedial coursework in math and English literacy when they go to college. But it did not tell us how many of these students ultimately succeed in college. And no data we currently collect tells us whether our students are ready for the jobs being created in this community. Today, as you pointed out, we turn our attention to what students will be expected to do when they graduate from high school. Kenny McDonald, who you've introduced, who's the Senior Vice President of the Columbus Partnership and the Chief Economic Officer of Columbus 2020, will describe to us what types of jobs the students of our city will find when they enter the workforce in the coming years, and what employers are telling our economic development officials about their current and their future workforce needs. Stacia Edwards, who you identified as the Director of Global STEM Workforce Development at Battelle, will help us understand what the economic development news that Mr. McDonald will give us means for the educational goals our children must meet. And finally, our great community college president, David Harrison, will provide an overview of how the state's largest community college addresses both college and career readiness challenges. Mayor and Council President, last week I reminded us that our city has a dynamic vision that you helped create and organizational structure to drive economic growth called Columbus 2020, and they're here. Columbus 2020 is busy selling companies all over the world on locating their business right here in Columbus. If their success depends solely on the hard work of Kenny and his colleagues and their aggressiveness, there's no question that Columbus's economy will grow and thrive in the coming years. But economic development experts and practitioners alike agree that a talented workforce is an indispensable ingredient of the growth and prosperity of a community. Mayor Coleman, Council President Ginther, we aim to help you make Columbus the most effective city at cultivating its homegrown talent to drive job creation and income growth. Today's briefing will help us understand the stakes involved. We're going to begin tonight's briefing, Mayor and Council President, with Kenny McDonald. Kenny, as I mentioned, is the Chief Academic Officer and Senior Vice President of Columbus Partnership and the Chief Economic Officer of Columbus 2020. In that role, he's the primary leader of all economic development and business attraction efforts, including the Columbus 2020 initiative. He has an extensive background in site selection, regional economic development, community marketing, business recruitment, and international business development. Before joining us here in Columbus, he served 7 years as the Executive Vice President of the Charlotte Regional Partnership, which is a public-private economic development organization covering a 16-county region in North and South Carolina. Kenny's 15 years of economic development experience also include leadership positions at the Albuquerque Economic Development Corporation, Floor Daniels Global Location Strategies, and the Savannah Economic Development Authority. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration from Dickinson State University and a Master in Public Administration from Georgia Southern University. He also holds the professional designation of Certified Economic Developer awarded through the International Economic Development Council. Kenny, welcome, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. Mayor Coleman, President Ginther, Eric, Councilman Tyson, and leaders. And I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by experts in education. And I will try to give my perspective as a person who focuses on job creation and has made it a career of speaking to companies and helping them facilitate the process of finding great talent and putting them to work in their companies around this country. I've been very fortunate to do that for the last 2 years here in the Columbus region, and we have many, many great things that we're working on. I thought I would give a little outline of what I'll try to cover this evening, and I think most importantly are my closing comments, and I look forward to the questions about what we're facing when we talk to companies every day. Those companies that are operating in our region, probably most importantly as our existing customers, and then finally those companies that are looking at us from around the world and making a decision about whether we're going to be the place that they're going to hire people or they're going to choose another location that they feel is better suited for them for whatever reason. First, I'd like to give maybe a snapshot of what our economy really looks like. We're very blessed to have a diverse economy. I'd like to go into a little bit what we think the areas of opportunity are in terms of industries and niche markets that we address. I would like to talk a little bit about why I think good jobs and the salaries that you talked about, Mayor, are so important. And then finally, I want to talk about what we call the new talent imperative with the customers that we're working with. I'm not sure where I should point this. Again, Columbus 2020 is a regional economic development organization focused on 11 counties here in central Ohio. Most importantly, for this group, I think, is the circle, which has 3 phrases on it that we lead with. Market access. We're a wonderful place to do business and reach markets not only in the U.S. and Canada but around the world.
Say, Kenny, could you speak up or bring the microphone closer to you? They can't hear you in the back.
No problem.
You know, if there's a way to turn it up, somebody.
It is on, right?
All right. Yeah, just get it closer to you.
Is that better? Okay.
There you go. Get that, there you go.
So market access is something that we talk a lot about. Value, which means we have to keep our costs under control, but we have a terrific place that costs a lot less than other parts of the world. And then what we lead with and what we think is most important in the future is talent. And it is more and more what companies are asking us ahead of what our costs are. They're asking us if we can deliver the talent that they need for their companies to grow and to prosper and to be profitable. And so what we're talking about this evening is not just linked to economic development. We like to think that economic development and education are absolutely interdependent. One cannot be done without the other. And these kind of conversations are very important to our effort. I mentioned that we're extraordinarily diverse as an economy. No one sector makes up more than 17% of our economy. If you looked at our pipeline of companies, both existing and new companies that are looking at our market, you will see companies from every sector of the economy. And this is both a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that there is no shortage of opportunity, and there's a lot of diversity of that opportunity. So if one chooses to be in almost any profession as they go through their school years, Columbus, Ohio can afford that opportunity to them. Whether they want to be an insurance broker, like the young lady who just spoke to us, or they want to be a scientist and work for Patel, or be a professor at Ohio State, or want to work in manufacturing, all of those opportunities are afforded to them within 20 minutes of this high school. And that's critically important and a luxury. The downside of that is that we have to we have no one thing to focus on. We have to prepare our talent to work in almost any kind of environment. And this is what we hear over and over again. We want children and kids to be ready to work, ready to continue to learn as they enter their careers, and finally to have a global acumen about them and understand the world and the competitiveness that they're going to face and the companies that they work for are going to face as they face world markets. We look at our economy in terms of 6 sectors that we think are really important. And again, we're very blessed to have great institutions and companies in all of these areas. If I look at manufacturing, I can talk about Honeywell and DuPont and PPG and Boeing and Rolls-Royce and Honda and just a number of companies that people can go work for, Worthington Industries. Brand names, companies that treat employees great, have great training programs, and have afforded people a wonderful opportunity from entry level all the way up to the management of the company. We're a global logistics hub, and whether someone starts in a warehouse here packing boxes, they can very quickly move to running that logistics center and probably doing so without much touch on a box at all. They're doing that from handheld computers, and STEM education is critically important. Science and technology jobs. We're a burgeoning technology hub, not only with small technology companies, but we have institutions like Patel. We have great companies like Manta that have started and are continuing to grow and add hundreds of jobs in our community. Those are technology jobs that other communities would love to have. Those kind of opportunities are right here. Agribusiness and the food industry and the connection between our agricultural community in Ohio and the kinds of things that happen inside the city in food and beverage manufacturing and processing and delivery and packaging, and the science around that is incredible. And then finally, we have over 600 foreign-owned companies that are employing our workforce right now. Just our Japanese companies alone in this region employ over 20,000 people, and there's over 160 of those companies in our region. Those afford wonderful opportunities for people to enter the workforce and then perhaps end up traveling around the world and being involved in multinational companies. And finally, our headquarters and business services is obviously extraordinarily strong. Number 3 location in the world for fashion design, as Richard Florida pointed out just a few weeks ago. Los Angeles, New York, and who knew, Columbus, Ohio. And we try to point this out to the world. we perhaps need to do a better job of telling parents and kids of these same opportunities and making them more aware. Below that is just a number of things that we can go out and talk about, and we talk to companies in these sectors every single day. And I wanted to make a point about this slide. One of the things that we've done over the last 20 months is talk to over 600 companies face-to-face in personal interviews. We didn't survey them from afar. We got in our car. We took a team of people with us. Folks from Columbus State often travel with us to do this. But we're inside their offices talking about what do they need and what are they experiencing with the hiring and firing of individuals. What challenges do they have in their workforce? And I'll speak to that in just a second. Our workforce is about 1 million people when you look at our 11-county region. We know that the city of Columbus rate is now below 6%. In the region, it's still very good comparatively to other parts of the country at just above 6%. But we have a very good situation comparatively now, but I completely agree with the mayor. We have a lot of work to do there, and there's 2 million people that are underemployed on top of the people that just can't find a job at all. Our job growth in education and health, in transportation and logistics, and professional services have been great, but too many of those jobs have been at an entry level and not the higher wage jobs that we are working so hard to try to recruit and retain here. We're growing, and we make up almost 100% of the growth in Ohio. And so what we do in Columbus and in the Columbus area is critically important for Ohio's success as well. And so we've got to keep pushing on this, and we need not only population growth, but we got to continue to grow our own talent base here.
Let me get this right. Say it again now. Columbus represents 100% of the growth of Ohio?
Up to about 2 years ago, if you took the...
I just want you guys to hear that again. Say it again.
Even if it's not true, I'm going to keep saying it. Our job openings, when we look at Ohio Means Jobs, this is something that I look at probably on a weekly basis to try to get a number and just a reminder at our staff meetings about the work that we have to do. So Ohio Means Jobs is a terrific resource, but you can still see job openings when you look at that through the back door of their website, 43,500 job openings that are posted there through Monster and Ohio Means Jobs. The top ads are for truck drivers and salespeople and managers. Again, these are not the top level jobs that we're going for, but this is where the bulk of the jobs in any economy are created, so this is pretty normal. There's just too many of them, is the point. The existing businesses that we talk to have a number of recurring issues. So number one is we need people that are ready to work. And I think any educator, anybody that works with companies on a daily basis would tell you that's probably the number one thing they hear. We encounter people all the time that are not ready to step into a role. They don't know the value of showing up on time, things like that. Finally, drug screening. So there may be hundreds of applicants for jobs in our community, but when you apply a drug test, sometimes over 70% of those that apply fall out based on that. And that's an alarming rate and something that's very challenging for our employers. It could be as high as 70% in some cases of people who fall out of the applicant pool just because they can't pass a drug test. Cost of health care is an issue, and there's a number of things, but clearly the number one thing that our people want to talk about when we show up on their doorstep is the workforce. I have more jobs posted than I can get. I'm working too hard to get the applicants that I end up having, and I really have too few qualified people for the things that I'm going after. And it crosses the board between welders and truck drivers to IT professionals. Take almost any category. It's very hard to find qualified applicants today.
Is there any information that suggests that Columbus is any different than any other community in the state of Ohio in that regard?
That's a great question, and it is absolutely a national issue. And we're very representative of what's happening across the country. So if I talk to my colleagues, or certain if you talk to other mayors around the country, they will tell you the same thing that their companies are experiencing, in that, number one, that's an issue. Number two, that's why I'm so optimistic about when we work together, and if we can address these issues, then we're going to have a huge advantage. And so that's why aligning economic development and education is so critical to our efforts. I wanted to touch on why are jobs so important. Why do we have to have an education system that's creating the product that allows us to grow our economy? And it's really simple. Over the last 10 years, we've seen our region get poorer. And we've now got the arrow headed back in the right direction. But we've got to continue to grow thousands and thousands of jobs. We've got to continue to grow a percentage of those jobs that are really well paying. But we've got to do it every year, year after year, to keep that arrow moving in the right direction. We were richer than the nation over a dozen years ago, and because of the financial crisis and a number of factors in the economy and the kind of jobs that we have here, those numbers have went in the wrong direction, and they were below the national average. Now, we have great partners in the education community, but too often we've got a lot of different entities working in and around economic development that are all going in slightly different directions. And so the connectivity between the local economic developer and the workforce investment boards needs to increase and get more aligned, not just in Columbus, but around the country. Our efforts have to be aligned with President Harrison's, and thankfully they are, but we've got to continue to work at that every single day. We've got to communicate, like I said, I think more at a secondary and elementary level from an economic developer standpoint, letting people know of the priorities, letting parents know, letting teachers know what we think those opportunities are in the economy and what we're experiencing. Because sometimes we can see a couple of years out. We can't see much further, but we can at least see a couple of years out. And then finally, this has been a fairly rapid transition, by the way, to what we call the new talent imperative, which is, it used to be that companies selected their location based solely on cost or solely on location to market. And now, increasingly, that third element of talent is very, very important, because the other two don't matter as much when you can't get qualified people or the right kind of talent for your particular operation. They're placing a higher premium on it. They're getting better advice about not making mistakes and locating in the wrong locations. There's high pay. There's several positions around our region that, just take welding, for example. I always joke that probably the BMW parked outside of a manufacturing plant is not the accountant, but the welder, or the electrician, or the multi-skilled maintenance person. That's really critical for parents and people to understand. There's stagnating pay for the middle ground. There's great opportunity in entry level. There's probably great opportunity if you're very skilled and have a niche. But those generalist jobs are really hard to come by, and there's stagnating pay, and there's obviously a lot of national stats that back that up. Even entry-level jobs require a lot of STEM. So we work with a lot of logistics companies, and if you visit Zulily or any of the companies that have come to our region recently, you'll see people walking around with handheld devices moving boxes. They're not moving boxes physically anymore. They're keeping inventory, and they're working really hard shuffling things around, but they have to have a lot of skill, and they better know addition and subtraction, multiplication, and algebra to be able to work even in a logistics operation, which 10 years ago that just wasn't the case. That's rapidly changing. skilled manufacturing is in high demand, and we're seeing it here. If you visit Tech Columbus and you see the kinds of things that are inside Tech Columbus, it's not just people making software and apps. They're actually learning to make things, and so that skill to become a mechanic or a manufacturing worker or something like that is critical to our economy, and our economy rewards it. Every worker is an IT worker. So I mentioned the logistics worker, but I would say almost every job requires a lot of IT. Just to wake up in the morning and get to work probably requires you to operate some devices, and that wasn't the case before. We have a demographic change. So there are thousands retiring every day. So there's great opportunity for younger people to move into positions, but we've got to be producing the talent and giving them the skills to move into those places quicker. And even the workplace is transitioning with millennials taking such a big role in our economy. So even the way people work and where they work is changing rapidly. And our system has to take that into account. They may not be going to an office or a building or a plant like we did before. They may actually be operating from a computer at home and have a very lucrative job. And more companies are looking for different ways to work. With that, I would just say a final comment is, in this arena, communities are really emperors with no clothes. So people that are looking at making investments in our community, in talent, in capital, are investigating everything about us. And they're going to find out. And we quite frankly don't want them to be surprised. So we want them to know what's happening. It is not unusual for our clients to ask us, introduce us to a principal or a superintendent, or let us inside. We want to walk through the school, or we want to go meet Dr. Harrison's students, and we want to see what the classrooms look like. Quite frankly, it's a very smart thing to do if you're on the other side, because I'm a salesperson for the community. I could tell them all wonderful things, but where the rubber meets the road is they want to go see what it looks like, and they can tell really quickly what kind of product we're creating by visiting what their workforce is going to look like in 4 or 5 years. And so what we do and how we address the issues we have in education is critical to our success or our failure in economic development. And I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Kenny. Questions?
Quick question for Kenny, and you mentioned it in this, and I've heard this from employers and economists and so forth around the challenge with those soft skills, just the ability to work in teams, communicate, reliability, punctuality.
They can't hear it.
Oh, reliability, punctuality, soft skills, and the challenge that both employers and economists talk about out there. Are there any, I know this part of the process we're not looking for solutions, but are there, in your experience and work around the country, are there communities that are doing this better than others? And do you have any sense of how we might approach that as a community and things we ought to be doing differently?
I might be wrong about this, but I have a general sense that we probably have the programs. And we probably, in terms of soft skills and pre-employment training, things like that, we could always use more. It's more a matter of connecting the dots. And so it's too often that employer who's experiencing that is not picking up the phone and calling someone. He or she is just thinking that's the way things are, and is not calling Dr. Harrison or us or the mayor about that issue, where perhaps we could connect them with a program. But it's not just that, and that was my point about you got to be ready to work, and you need to know the value and the reason that you need to show up on time and be dressed a certain way. And unlike when probably we started our first jobs, when you get acceptance to your job and show up, that's when the learning really begins, and you have to be committed to additional learning year after year. which there's no deep breath after you get hired. And so the willingness to continue to learn is really important too.
Couple things. One, I saw Shauna Gibbs, school board member, come in. I didn't see her in the beginning. I'm sorry about that. There she is. Do the wave, do the wave, do the wave. All right, got it. So you talked about, tell me a little bit about your thinking about predicting growth sectors. You mentioned 2-year period, is that what you said? 2-year period to really predict accurately what a growth sector is. And then the next question after that is, it seems to me part of our role is to gin up for those growth sectors. Speed is important in terms of how you get folks ready, or at least put an infrastructure in that addresses that, that growth sector faster, rather than a 10-year period, a 7-year period, a 5-year period, 2-year period. But tell me about what you're thinking on growth sectors and predictability.
This is where community colleges are so fantastic, right? We live in a very rapid, very changing environment, and so what wasn't even a profession 2 years ago may quickly become something that is something that's in great need. I'll just point to the Harvard Business Review said that a data scientist would be the hottest job for the next 10 years. People who can manage data and actually make sense of it and draw insights from it. That's not something that that's not a degree you can get today in most places, and so that's something that just creeps up on us, and then all of a sudden is there. I would say we deal with clients who, as we start to see trends, and a lot of our clients are planning things that are 18 months away or 2 years away. And so we can start, that's why it's so important we try to push out all of our data and say, these are the kinds of industries that we're seeing coming across our desk, the RFPs. People want to build facilities and employ people. These are the jobs, and that's why it's really important that we continue to monitor it. My caution about predicting is 2 decades ago, everybody said, get out of manufacturing, don't send your kids into manufacturing. There's no more jobs, they're all going to be overseas. We have thousands and thousands of manufacturing jobs and a need for more skilled manufacturing workers, because for 2 decades or even 25 years we've told people don't go into those professions. IT probably suffers from exactly the same thing. So we have service providers from India that want to double their workforce in the U.S., but they can't find U.S. citizens to do the kind of jobs they can find easily in India with the kind of skills that the kids with the skills that they have in India. And again, that's a product of us predicting that those jobs were all going to be offshored, and it turned out to be false. So we need to live in the here and now and monitor this stuff all the time. But I think what is maybe most important, and this is my opinion, not maybe so factually offered, is that we need to focus on those general skills that give people the cognitive ability to solve problems, to work in teams, to be ready to work and ready to continue to learn, and not putting them in some silo that says this is where the jobs are going to be, because we probably will get it wrong.
Good point. Very good point.
So Kenny, let me provoke you for a second as we close and turn to Stacia. You're sitting next to a college president. And when you talk to businesses, are they asking about degrees and credentials, or are they just asking about skills and qualified workers?
They're talking about talent and certificates and a little bit about degrees. They want to know if you have programs in these areas, but far more of our clients are worried about people with six-week certificates, or people that come out of 1 or 2 year programs. And again, back to the talent. They want to know competencies. Do you have, IT people want to know if you have people with gaming experience and development. They don't necessarily care about what degree they may have in computer science in general. So it's a challenge for us and a big challenge for post-secondary education.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Kenny. It was an excellent presentation. We're going to turn now to Stacia Edwards, and I suspect that she's going to pick right up where Kenny left off in talking about the types of skills that employers are looking for. Stacia Edwards is the Director of Global STEM Workforce Development at Battelle. In this role, she's working to develop system-level linkages between Battelle's STEM education initiatives and the talent needs of businesses. Stacia spent more than 25 years in higher education administration prior to coming to Battelle. Most recently, she was the Deputy Chancellor of the University System of Ohio, where she worked to develop a mutually beneficial relationship between the economic and workforce development needs of the state. She began her work in workforce development at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, where she served as the director of the Regional Workforce Transformation Consortium. Prior to Sinclair, she spent 22 years at Wright State University as the director of student affairs in the Department of Psychology and assistant dean in the College of Science and Mathematics. She received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Hanover College in Indiana, a Master of Arts degree from Indiana University, and she is currently pursuing her doctorate at the University of Pennsylvania. Stacia.
Are those some of the credentials you were talking about?
Hopefully they matter. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor Coleman and President Ginther, for this opportunity to be here this evening, and thank you to everyone else and all the elected officials for coming to listen to this important conversation.
If you could talk right directly into the microphone.
Pull it toward you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Lean it up a little too. Well, you already did all the introductions. So we heard Kenny talk a little bit about what this economy is going to look like in 2020 and what it looks like today. And what I wanted to do is kind of set the context a little bit with regards to education and training. And when we think about education and we think about the 20th century model of education, really what we think about is the fact that you went to school, but then you engaged with business. And through that engagement with business, you actually learned what was required by that company that usually you stayed with for the rest of your life. They call that the company man or company woman model. But today, as you just heard Kenny refer to, the businesses are needing individuals to come, and they need them to be work ready right when they come out the door, whether it's high school, community college, or the four-year degree. So now we're talking about this skills gap. Isn't that a great picture? And many of us, we've heard about the skills gap, and what we're finding is that there are a significant amount of individuals who are unemployed but who want to work, and we're finding businesses who can't find the workers that they need. So when we say that there's the skills gap, that's what we're referring to. Now, many of us attribute that skills gap to technology, because we know that technology has come about. It's changing very rapidly. If we just think about right now, so we're talking about Columbus in 2020, but let's just think back 10 years. And everyone has been, you have your phones. I don't even think we were texting yet, but remember when we first all had to learn how to text? You were trying to do, the 3 letters with your one finger. And now you think about where your phone is and the iPad and the new developments every day. Well, that change is going to continue. And so one of the things that we know, and in trying to respond to businesses and addressing this gap, we develop training for technology. And that sometimes is easy to do because it's very specific what this technology is needed with regards to the training. But it's also then the easiest to digitize, the easiest to automate and to outsource. And it's the fastest then to become obsolete. So when we think about IT and some of the issues that we've found with regards to recruiting individuals to go into IT, this is kind of where the fear comes from. If they're getting an education or if they're getting training in IT, they're fearful that once they get the training that it will become obsolete. Now McKinsey has just told us that they interviewed some businesses, and 40% of the businesses that were considering hiring had positions open for 6 months. So I'd like you to think about that from the economic context. So if you have a company and they're unable to fill their positions, that means that there's no one who's taking that pay home. They're not able to buy things from your economy. So this is really critical that we figure out a way to address this so these businesses can find the individuals that they need when they want to hire them. So when you ask the businesses what it is that they're looking for, and Manpower does this study every year, and if you've never dug into this, it's actually kind of fun, because you can see that these top 10 skills haven't changed. These are the top 10 skills that the businesses are asking for. And they're the same skills, not just in Ohio, not just in the US. These are the same skills that are being required of businesses or that they're looking for globally. And this is what sometimes people will call the 21st century skills. But I find this to be rather funny. If you look at these skills up here, you see honesty and integrity, you see organizational skills, flexibility and adaptability. And I would argue that those are the same skills that were required at the turn of the century when the Right B Flyer was designed and developed here in the state of Ohio. Yeah, that's my Dayton coming out of me. So maybe the only one that you needed was computer skills, but I would argue that at that point in time, there was something equivalent to computer skills that the Wright brothers were really good at that helped them. All that being said, if you look at the American Management Association, they interviewed businesses and they asked them how important these 21st century skills are to them. And 76% of them said that they're going to become more important in the future. So that really gives us this landscape of the skills that are being required. And when you think about students going through education, these are the skills, those foundational skills that they have to be successful. But how do we measure skills? Well, this is actually a picture of an old drapery guild. And the reason I like this picture is because in the turn of the century, individuals used to, they would show that they were interested in something, they would learn about it, and then they would demonstrate competency, and then they would do the work. And now today you hear, and you've already heard that referred to, we're talking about things like certificates, we're talking about badges and certifications as possible ways to demonstrate that someone has these skills. In fact, just last week when we started talking about this, this presentation, there was an article in Inside Higher Education that was talking about getting smarter on skills training. It was talking about the businesses now that are emerging that are willing to test you and give you a certificate that shows that that you have a certain skill. One company highlighted in this article actually has 400 different tests that you can take, one of which will show that you're good at grammar. But I wonder, are these really the way, is this really the way that we are going to demonstrate that individuals have these skills? The quote from this article said, "It's easy to imagine a future where employers can identify prospective recruits or screen applicants through an easy-to-use assessment system." So I would just suggest that the landscape right now is changing. Now, we just talked a little bit about skills, and the question was posed to Kenny earlier about education. And what we know about education is that in 1978, the American workforce, 28% had at least some college. When you look at the workforce of 2010, 59% have at least some college. And for those of you who've seen the work of Tony Carnevale at the Georgetown Workforce Institute, they're projecting 63% of jobs will require some college. Now, this is just having some credit beyond your high school degree. And what we know from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we can't make these charts up, is that education does pay. Individuals, the higher you get with regards to the education you've earned, the more money you earn. And also, the other side of the chart, it's showing you unemployment. So your opportunity, well, basically, your chances of unemployment go down as well. So yes, it's true that education pays, but based on that skill conversation, I would say that it's more important than ever what you study actually matters. So as we think about Columbus in 2020, I like to characterize it in something different than the specific industries that we're going to need. So this is just the way I like to think about it. And I like to think about it from the perspective of we're still going to need people to make things. And I think that's really, really important. So when you think about manufacturing, what makes me, honestly, it makes me sad is that somehow that now has a lower status associated with it. But actually making things is one of the coolest things that you can do, and the economic developers will tell you, we want people to make things here. We also need people to do things. And what I mean by that are the service occupations. So for instance, the teachers and healthcare, we're still going to need people to do that in 2020. And then we're also going to need people who think. And what I mean by that are in the research and development areas where they're actually creating the knowledge and the new things that we're going to be making. So when we think about these different these industries that fall within these categories, what types of skills are these individuals going to need in 2020? Well, in manufacturing, they're going to need to be transdisciplinary. We're already seeing that right now with something called mechatronics, where individuals aren't specialists in one particular area, they're specialists in multiple areas. They're also going to have to be computational thinkers, and that basically means that they're going to have to be able to use computers. Everyone's going to have to use the computers. One of the occupations in highest demand, yes, welding's in high demand, but one of the other areas is machinists. And those machinists have to be able to use computers. And additionally, they're going to have a design mindset. And what that means is individuals who are in manufacturing, they're not going to be in doing tasks over and over and over again. They're actually going to be making things, and they're going to be figuring out how to design those projects better, and they're also going to be figuring out how to do their work differently. In the area of healthcare, I thought we could highlight this because what we see happening, certainly with all of the IT going on in healthcare, is that individuals in healthcare are going to have to do virtual collaboration. They're going to be interacting with people that they've never met before, which means that their social intelligence is key. And also in the area of healthcare, in any of the areas that we're talking about, you're going to have cultural competency because the demographics are changing. Columbus in 2020, we're going to have people speaking languages other than English. We already do. So it's really important when we're training the youth, when we're thinking about education, that we're thinking about these cultural competencies as well. Finally, when we talk about thinking, I couldn't help but think about Patel. In our area of research and development, we heard it mentioned before about data and analysts, and actually in the Harvard Business Review, they said it was going to be the sexiest occupation. How about that? Data scientists are sexy. But these data scientists, so we have all of this data now, and we have to be able to make sense of it. So it isn't the same as now we have hunches. We actually have the data to make better decisions. We have the data to be more efficient, but we have to have people who have the expertise in that. We also have to, this one, I love the phrase, it's called cognitive load management. And what that means is we're going to have the ability to deal with all this information that's coming at us. So I feel that generation gap, I have to say, when it comes to tweeting, because just dealing with the massive amount of information that comes in is not something I was trained to do. I have to train myself on how to manage that information and then in a useful way, so it isn't a distraction. It's actually something that helps me in my work. And then finally, we have to think about novel and adaptive thinking. Again, this isn't about being repetitive. This is about what's next. And when we think about Patel, we're thinking about what are those new products? Where are we going to go next? And the only way that we're going to capitalize on that, though, is if we have individuals who can do the work, who can then design it, and who can make it. So for Columbus 2020, we're really talking about the continued rise of smart machines. This extreme longevity, it means we're going to be working longer. We're living longer, so naturally we're going to be working longer. And we're going to be in a globally connected world. And these topics that I got came from the Institute for the Future. It's a company that's it's international, but it's based out in California. And these are some of the paradigms that they believe that we need to be preparing for. So with that globally connected world in mind, and we're talking about Columbus City Schools, those are the skills, that's the education that we need to prepare for. Critical thinking and adaptability. So the youth, the individuals, the people that we train and educate need to be able to adapt for whatever's coming. They need to be able to adapt from one industry to another. They need to be able to adapt from one job to another and adapt when that job changes. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to questions.
Thank you, Stacia. Questions? Well, I think we're going to give you a break. Stacia's losing her voice. You made it to the end. There aren't questions, but we thank you for that terrific presentation. I was thinking when you were talking about the smart machines, many of us know that one of the largest employers in this part of Ohio is the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. You mentioned Dayton, the Wright Flyer. At Wright-Patterson, they have all the Air Force research directorates is the name of each of the major research divisions at Wright-Patterson. One of them is called human effectiveness. And the essential point is that it's already the case that the technology that we have in our weaponry and our airplanes is more sophisticated than human beings can manage and manipulate. So we have to become better at using the technologies that are available to us so that we can be more effective and efficient. And so this notion
I saw
of
a movie
smart
about
machine,
that one time.
Right? That's right. This notion of smart
they took
machines.
over the world.
They do.
Didn't they, Nellie?
The notion of smart machines is very accurate. So let's move then to the college president, who we've been already putting on the spot with all this talk about certificates and degrees. David Harrison has quickly become well known to all of us in this community through his dynamic leadership of Columbus State Community College. It's hard to believe that he's only been in that position since July of 2010, when he became the 5th president of Columbus State. With more than 30,000 students, Columbus State is one of the largest and most comprehensive colleges in Ohio. Dr. Harrison, during his tenure at Columbus State, he's focused the college on the goals of access and college readiness, student success and attainment, and workforce innovation, which is certainly why we've asked him to help us think about this issue tonight. Dr. Harrison came to Columbus State from Florida, where he was the vice provost for regional campuses at the University of Central Florida, where he worked with community colleges to create the Central Florida Higher Education Consortium. Prior to joining the University of Central Florida, he served in leadership roles at Seminole State College in Florida and at our own St. Clair Community College in Ohio. So this was a homecoming for him. He holds a PhD in educational policy and leadership from The Ohio State University. He has an MBA from the Katz Graduate School of Business at the University of Pittsburgh and a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from the University of Dayton. Thank you, Dr. Harrison, for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Eric, thank you. Mayor Coleman, Council President Ginther, thank you for allowing me to be here. I worry that I'm a classic example of all these degrees and no real skills, so I hope, hope that's not the case here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this issue tonight. I think we've got a chance in our region to rethink what we mean by college success and really position our young people to thrive in the environment that Kenny and Stacia have done such a great job of laying out for us. And I really think our city and our region is as well positioned as anybody to capitalize on this disruption and use it to our advantage. So I want to talk a little bit about some national trends that we're paying attention to. I'll try not to be repetitive. Bring it down to what we're seeing in Ohio, and then talk about what we're doing about it locally. Now, recognizing that under the best of circumstances, PowerPoint can be both powerless and pointless. I'm going to go quickly, so interrupt me if you have questions, and certainly I think the three of us would be glad to be a part of the discussion as we finish here. I'd like to start by providing a quick overview of Columbus State. We are in the thick of this nexus between high school, higher education, and the workplace. So having a little context in that regard, I think, will be helpful. As has been mentioned, we're one of the largest community colleges in America. Very comprehensive, as I'll talk a little bit about. We've talked about, the mayor mentioned some of the assets we had in the region, and a lot of us have talked about what a large college town we are, one of the largest college towns in America, Columbus is. Columbus State is the only open access institution in that higher education portfolio, which puts us in a unique position and really enables us to be, requires us to be in a lot of ways, the front door to higher education for most students in Central Ohio. Almost all of our students are from here, and almost all of them want to stay here. We've made, I think, some good strides with regard to our university transfer programs. Many of you are aware of our preferred pathway partnership with Ohio State, which guarantees admission for our graduates to Ohio State. We have similar programs with the great private and other public institutions we have in our region, including what we call 2+2 and even 3+1 programs, where students can earn 2 years or even 3 years of their bachelor's degree at Columbus State before transferring on to earn their baccalaureate degree. That provides tremendous value and high quality experience for a lot of students and families in our region. What we're talking about tonight is our work in workforce development and innovation, and I think we bring some important assets to bear in that regard. We have associate degree programs and certificate programs in the industries that you see listed here and many more. We have important partnerships with employers. All of our technology programs, workforce-oriented programs, have industry advisory committees where we're getting input on an ongoing basis with regard to their needs as it reflects in our curriculum. We're highly diverse in mission and in the kinds of students that we work with. Again, as I said, we're an open access institution, and that spirit of inclusion is one that we take very seriously, and it reflects into our academic programs. It also reflects in the way we interact with students. And we talk about our work in the context of the emerging workforce, typically younger students, younger adults who are entering the workforce for the first time, the incumbent workforce, those who are already working, and we're working with their employer to increase their skills, or perhaps they're coming on their own to increase their skills, to expand opportunities. And the transitional workforce, and really a lot of the growth we've seen in the last several years during the recession has been in the transitional workforce space, where employees have either been displaced or been worried about becoming displaced. They've come back to Columbus State, done exactly what we wanted them to do. They've come back to be reskilled for when the current hiring trend takes place again. So the rest of my remarks will be organized loosely around these three groups. For us to maintain our position as a global leader, there's a lot of thought out there that we really need to redefine what we mean by college success. There's an organization called Jobs for the Future that has partnered recently with Harvard to create a report called Pathways to Prosperity. And they hold, and I agree with them, that while our emphasis on the bachelor's degree is to be lauded, in some ways we've become over-reliant on that as what we mean by college success. As a result, half or more of young adults aren't fitting into that mold and are finding themselves unprepared for the emerging workforce. This college for all movement that a lot of us have been focused on, I think can be redefined in different terms when we think about a post-secondary credential for all. Clearly, college, something after high school, is something that students need, but how we define that and what success looks like and how we work together to define it.
David, can I
think it's
just
an important piece to
challenge a second and ask, does it have to be post-high school credential, or is it an additional credential that can be earned perhaps even simultaneously?
Yeah, that's a great point, because the function of time starts to mean a little less when you've got this convergence, I think, that we have. So when we talk about a post-secondary credential, I think in the literature, it really is a pathway to higher education, to college. But as I'll talk about, we do have some models in place to accelerate that so that students can earn, quote unquote, a post-secondary credential or credit towards that while still in high school. Stroke of genius to have this session in this building because in a lot of ways this is a lab for what we're talking about, and really this kind of integration of the secondary school experience, the post-secondary experience, and the high-performance workplace.
Okay, I admit it was the mayor's idea to have it here.
I think it was Gene Harris.
Was it Dr. Harris's? Oh, let's give credit where it's
Carol
we got to give credit where it's due.
Carol Perkins. That's where it came from.
So you've seen a version of this from Stacia, but by 2020, nearly 2 out of every 3 jobs will require some form of post-secondary education. And this chart shows the educational attainment makeup relative to our workforce over time. You can see in 1973 that 72% of the jobs in America required nothing more than a high school diploma. And you can see as it projects to 2020 that nearly 2/3 of the jobs are going to require some form of post-secondary education. Employers are less and less comfortable hiring students directly out of high school. And in fact, if you peel back these numbers, 9 out of 10 jobs that require a high school diploma or less are either low-wage jobs or in declining industries.
Now, back to the point that Eric was making. Do you have statistics that show that high school students who are credentialed have a better chance of employment after high school without going this direction?
I don't. There may be those at Columbus City Schools who do. That's an answerable question, though. My experience is that that's more likely in some industries than others. So in some of the skilled trades, apprenticeship programs, and those kinds of things, that still is a viable model.
Okay.
I don't know of anywhere that's really being brought to scale in some of the industries that Kenny's talking about. Others might.
Okay.
This has an important impact on earning potential. And this chart shows the makeup of the middle class relative to educational attainment. Middle class in this chart is defined by income between $35,000 and $70,000 a year. And you can see that those who have only a high school education are making up a smaller portion of the middle class in the time frame that's identified here. In 1970, almost 3/4 of the middle class was made up of those with a high school diploma or less, and now it's less than 40% where that's the case. So now more than ever, there's a direct link between educational attainment and personal income. And when we talk about measures of economic development, per capita income, I think, is one that we want to pay close attention to. Now in America, we have done really what we set out to do, is we've emphasized the baccalaureate degree as college success. On a competitive basis, we've done pretty well. Now there's still a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of important work going on to actually increase these numbers. But again, we've got some real strength on an international basis in that regard. As this slide shows, we don't fare quite so well in what we might call a sub-baccalaureate level, or the the skills certificates, associate's degrees, those kinds of things that we've been talking about. So the system is working really well for the students that it works for. And that ends up being about 25% of all students. The research shows that 25% of all college students in America today are what we would consider traditional college students, meaning they've gone to college directly out of high school. They're full-time college students living residentially with most of their expenses paid by their parents, 25%. So the things I'm talking about tonight are really the other 75%. Students who have had gaps in their education, students who have served in the military before returning to school, students who have family responsibilities, job responsibilities, or commuting, who have life barriers in front of them. And that's the area where I think we've got some real opportunity. So we don't really have a degree gap so much as we have a skills gap, as Stacia mentioned, and I want to talk a little bit about that and what it means in our state. The skills gap can be defined in a bunch of different ways, but for these purposes, I'm using these data from Complete College America, which projects that by 2020, 59% of the jobs in Ohio will require a post-secondary degree or certificate. Currently in Ohio, there are 36% of adults 25 to 64 who currently hold that credential, which gives us a skills gap of 23%. Now, these numbers aren't precise, and a lot of it does end up coming back to the Carnevale research, but it depends on which dates you're looking at and those kinds of things. But I think it gives us a good estimate of what our opportunity here, is here. So it gives you a feel for kind of a call to action, if you will, as we think about what our strategy is in Columbus. The Lumina Foundation has been active in calling this to leaders' attention on a national scale. And they have created a challenge, a big goal, that 60% of adults would have a post-secondary credential by 2025. To do that, Ohio would need over 900,000 new people to earn a post-secondary credential by 2025. And as you can see from the chart here, if we do nothing more than what we're currently doing and just rely on simple demographics, we'll be at about 44% instead of 60%. So the delta there is the 900,000. No region in America today is at 60%, and only 4 are at 50%.
Which 4?
Washington, D.C., Boston, San Francisco, the Bay Area, and Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I think the highest is at 54%. So if you accept that as a challenge, as we have, and I'll talk about it, it really gives us, I think, a discrete target to shoot for and can be a defining principle for our work going forward. So what does that mean in the state and then more specifically in our region? As has already been mentioned, Columbus, Central Ohio, is the most economically diverse region in the state. The one region of the state that is growing. In fact, if you believe some people, it's responsible for all the growth in the state. And you can see that Franklin County.
More than one person. I think New York Times Magazine said that. We didn't say that. New York Times Magazine said that the growth in Ohio is in Columbus.
Well, I always believe the New York Times Magazine. But I think we see it every day. I mean, I'm joking, but I think we do have an important opportunity here. And if the state is going to achieve a 60% goal, then we've got to do more than our fair share. And this has been discussed in working groups, again, that I'll talk about, because not every region of the state is going to achieve that goal. In fact, currently there are only 9 counties, if you look at this chart, that are over 40%. And some of those are in pretty low populous areas. So Franklin County, Columbus, Central Ohio really has the opportunity to be, and really a responsibility, I think, to be the engine of growth for our state. A group of educators have gotten together and really taken this as a call to action, and I want to talk a little bit about the Central Ohio Compact. And I know we're not supposed to really start talking about solutions, but I think at this stage of this presentation, there's no harm in at least starting that conversation. The work of the compact really started with superintendents and higher education leaders taking a look at why more students aren't successful in college, why students aren't completing college. We're getting students into college, we're not getting them out. So how might we better align in that regard? So the compact really takes a strategic look at how we can use all of our assets in our region in a thoughtful way to eliminate uncertainty for students and families, and to really lay out a pathway, a guaranteed pathway in many ways, for students to earn a post-secondary credential and put them on a pathway to success. I won't read through each of these, but the overall goal, again, is to adopt the 60% target, but dramatically increase the productivity, dramatically increase the number of students who are earning degrees and credentials in our region. The second two bullets really talk about the interface between higher ed and typically the community college and the high schools. The third and fourth bullets talk about the transition really from community college to the university. And one of the things we found is that it's those transition points where students fall out. So the ability to more deeply integrate from among the different sectors is something that we're really focused on. We've talked a little bit about dual enrollment. Dual enrollment is where a high school student can earn college credit while still in high school, but it also counts towards their high school diploma. The initial conversations around dual enrollment were really in the bachelor's degree space. It was the idea of having students earn freshman level coursework that would lead ultimately to a baccalaureate degree. The conversations we're having now, can we have that, use that same mechanism to create opportunities for those students to earn workforce skills that, oh, by the way, also put them on a pathway to higher education. So that's the space we're really trying to operate in now. We've got good momentum around the transition from high school to the community college, good momentum around the transition from the community college to our many university partners. Now we want to work on the transition from education, post-secondary education, to the workplace. And what we're finding is that that's not a linear process that keeps going back and forth, and I think that's a good thing. We want to get better at doing that, though. Stacia talked about 21st century skills, and I guess I want to say for these next few slides as I conclude, if we get this piece right, and frankly there's no reason that we shouldn't, because this set of assets in many ways is unsurpassed in America. And if we can get this alignment that we're talking about, it could easily, I won't say easily, but it could become the most productive workforce development network in America. We get this right, Kenny's phone's not going to stop ringing. And that's really what we're trying to do, is generate that kind of buzz and that kind of leadership about Central Ohio and the city of Columbus. So the 21st century skills piece, I think, is a good example, and I want to conclude by just going through some specific examples where, Mayor, you asked about this, and we really have tried to take the skills that Stacia and Kenny have talked about and package it in a way that we can both measure as well as move the needle from an employer perspective so they can see a difference. Now, the starting point for us has been with the incumbent workforce. So we have partnered with employers that you can see listed here. They've created with us the curriculum, and we've delivered that training either at their location or at ours, but it's been within the context of their workplace. We've then taken it and provided that same opportunity for those in the transitional workforce. One of the pedagogical guidelines is to really create a culture that these folks understand.
Your PhD's coming into play here.
As I was saying it, I was trying to bring it back and I couldn't. But one of the things we're trying to
bring it back home, will you?
One of the
say that again.
One of the learning outcomes. One of the things we're trying to teach folks is that culture matters. And culture differs employer by employer. So doing this at the workplace really matters. It's hard to replicate in the classroom. But again, through guidance from employers, we've been able to use the classroom setting and the students in those classrooms as their work teams. So the ability to really emulate what's going to be expected in the high-performance workplace is something we've built into these programs. Companies are using this both as a standalone 21st century skills diploma. They're also using it to integrate in with specific technologies or industry-specific kinds of things that they need. The point we're at now, and Mr. Mangus talked about it, is to be able to take these same skills, package it in a way that the emerging workforce, younger students, can have those same kinds of opportunities, hopefully towards the end of having this be an entry-level credential for a lot of those students. We talked about the fact that employers are reluctant to hire those with a high school diploma. We want to redefine what that looks like, and this may be an avenue to do it. This is Kenny's slide looking at the sectors that we're focusing on. And in many ways, the 21st century skills package that we've been talking about all night is the passport, the entry-level credential for all of these industries and more. It's not sufficient, it's not the end point, but it's a better starting point than where students are now. And to kind of bring it home, as I do conclude here, into one industry that we've already talked about with regard to logistics, you can see, I know it's a busy slide, but you can see the progression of job responsibilities, the progression of salary with the progression of skills, of industry certificates, and of degree programs. What you'll also see is even at the entry level, 21st century skills are required. And throughout the continuum, throughout the career path, they build on one another to include technical skills and those kinds of things. But you can see in general how that drives earning power and ultimately drives per capita income. As I said, I think we've got an opportunity that would be the envy of a lot of regions. I think we've got some assets in place from both K-12, higher ed, and the employer community, we're ready to think about things differently. And at Columbus State, we appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this conversation.
Thank you, President Harrison.
Dr. Harrison, if you could go back to that last slide that you just had up there. And, you know, particularly, I mean, based on having Kenny here from 2020, one of the major overarching goals, in addition to creating 100,000 new jobs and the work and focus there, is increasing the median income in Columbus and Central Ohio by, I believe, 30%. Is that correct? Yep. So when you look at this chart, which I think does a great job of illustrating the connection between credentials, education, and wages, that primarily that has its focus on level 4 and level 3 of this chart. I mean, the only way that we're going to be able to realize that goal that we collectively have as a community is really looking primarily at those two, based on the median income right now in Columbus and Central Ohio.
Just a note about that. So it's first of all, it's important that a lot of jobs be created. So the more money from entry level on up, of people that actually have money in their pocket to buy a cheeseburger or tires or whatever we've got to buy, is critically important. So we think the goal is 150,000 net new jobs over 10 years. And the reason that was chosen is the number of jobs you create actually has a big impact on your per capita. Not just that we're going to only get good jobs here at over $50,000 a year. We need entry level, we need mid level, we need the whole ladder that Dr. Harrison has represented in this chart. And so we got to create a lot of them, and we have to have the top end of it be part of the scale, because we certainly have the entry level covered.
Could I ask just a quick question that I think each of you touched on, but it's different and unique to Columbus because more people that live here now weren't born here, fastest growing part of the state, fastest growing economy in the state, and one of the fastest growing in the country. Talk to us a little bit about the impact the graying of the workforce has on a place where people are coming and we're growing as a community. Also with the demographic shift with more workers working longer based on life expectancy, other types of things, and where that positions us if there's going to be this great shortage of skilled workers as more and more boomers retire, how that positions us in a great position to leverage that for the future.
I'm a board member of the International Economic Development Council, and to tell you how important we think that issue is, there was a webinar about that. I mean, again, people were whispering about that 10 years ago about this coming demographic shift, but it's upon us, and for our industry, it's really, really important. So you take certain companies and certain industries, they have huge issues in this. So you take the utilities industry, for example. Go over to AP, you meet a lot of people who've worked there for 30 years, and they're going to have a transitioning workforce. To me, that's an unbelievable opportunity for both mid-level people to move up into those positions and for entry-level people to move up the ladder a little bit, but a huge challenge for our country and for our city in that a lot of knowledge is walking out the door. Both tacit, skilled workers that know how to do things, as well as just institutional knowledge walking out the doors and not coming back. And so we've got to really address this challenge. I personally think it's an enormous opportunity as a young city. We're younger than the average metropolitan area, and it's an advantage for us.
Just to go back on what Andy just talked about, I agree we need to get as many jobs as we possibly can in this community, and we're doing a good job at that. We're doing a really good job at that. One of the most concerning slides I saw presented tonight was the slide that showed our per capita income is going down in comparison with the rest of the state and the rest of the country. And so what that suggests to me is that while the jobs are being created, and that's good, everybody needs a job, and that adds to the economic vibrancy of any community when people have a job and they're employed. But one of our focuses, and this is more economic development and I guess education as well, is preparing the workforce for those higher paying jobs. And what Andy was talking about, that level 3 and 4. And now just a story, and back when I've mentioned this before, and when I was a young council member 20 years ago, at a chamber meeting, there was a decision, a conscious decision by this community to focus on logistics jobs. I think that was a good decision, and it has been fruitful for our community in many ways. We have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of logistics types jobs. And as a result, we're now a logistics center. But I remember asking the question, well, how much do these jobs pay? And I don't remember the exact amount, but I was astonished. I said, well, that's not very much. Why are we focused on that as opposed to something else that pays a little more? And I was almost thrown out the room. But as we talk about economic growth and talk about education growth as well, while we need to grow jobs, as you said, grow jobs, we also need to go after and prepare our workforce for a higher level job, because as everybody has said, the more education, the more certification, the more you get paid, the higher the income.
And I think as a community, we need to continue to reinforce that. I mean, one of the issues with a slide like this is you focus on the entry level. You always need a lot of entry-level jobs. The problem we have right now is too many people are staying in those.
Is what?
Too many people are staying in those entry-level
Staying
jobs,
at that,
right?
yeah, staying
Because
there, right.
because they're not upskilling, they're not following this continuum, and maybe they're leaving one organization and going to an entry-level job at another organization. So again, as a region, I think we can tap into tuition reimbursement and the commitment that a lot of employers have to growing their employees and really help students understand what the opportunities are.
So retraining should be a focus as well. Continuous ongoing retraining.
Yeah, and I'd also like to add on that, the slide that Kenny showed with regards to the research that he can get from Jobs Ohio with the jobs that are open, a number of those jobs were the retail jobs, and they're going to be in the low-paying space, but there were also a significant number of jobs for computer programmers, for people who are working in that IT space. When you look at the economic benefit if you just fill those jobs, it's significant. So those are jobs that are here already, but that can't be filled. So there has to be a focus in this pipeline to addressing those shortages now, but also then focusing so that we don't have those shortages in the future.
Well, I see. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was going to say that's a great point. I was just going to illustrate it. I was with a business leader a couple of weeks ago who said that in their space, it was an HR leader who employs IT professionals, that the unemployment rate for IT professionals in Columbus is less than 1%. So that's what we need to be looking at to really try to create the kind of growth in per capita income that we all want.
I learned in my last job to never cut off a college president, so I think I think I've corrected myself now. First of all, let me thank President Harrison and Kenny McDonald and Stacia Edwards for their contributions to this dialogue. What you saw tonight is a result of not only their careers of expertise, but a tremendous amount of time spent to prepare for this evening. So thank you very much. We appreciate your time. I want to encourage those who may be listening or watching this program to go to the city's website, where you'll find all of the presentations from this evening posted, so you can download the PowerPoints, as well as view, if you'd like, the video presentation so that you can think about these issues again. I strongly encourage people now to go back to last week's presentation and merge together what we learned about where we are in terms of the actual productivity of our school system and what we know about our students' current academic achievement and what we now know about the economic benefits of education and the job openings and demands of the workforce in Columbus. It's really the cumulative information of all these briefings together that will form the basis of any further steps and actions that the President, the Council President, that the Mayor and the Council President will want to take. That's on the city's website again at www.columbus.gov/education. I also want to invite those of you who are here tonight and who might be watching this videotape to join us at the third briefing in this series, which will be next Thursday, November 1st at 2 p.m. At the Metro Early College High School. And the topic there will be the innovations in teaching and learning that are now available to us to address some of the challenges that have been laid before us this evening and last week. So until next week, we thank everybody for their participation in these briefings and look forward to the continued dialogue about education in the city of Columbus. Thank you and good evening.